Hello BookTube, this is part 32 of my 2022 library tour and part 9 of science fiction and fantasy. This is the second shelf of the, or middle shelf of the, one of the two bookcases that my grandfather made, and most of these books are J's. Actually, I think they're all J's. Anyway, let's get going. So first up is Redwall by Brian Jacques. This is, yet again, one of the books I picked up from the Friends at the Library book sale nook for 25 cents. And I haven't gotten to yet. I do remember, I think, having seen some episodes of the Redwall animated series on PBS. But, so it's basically Redwall is sort of a fantasy series about sentient animals acting as humans, but don't know much more than that. Next is another book I picked up from the Friends at the Library book sale nook. This is The Last Magicians by John Jakes, which I haven't read either. Really need to get to a lot of these so I can finally decide whether or not I want to keep them or send them on their way. The next two books are by Marlon James. This is Black Leopard, Red Wolf. The first book in the Dark Star Trilogy, I think is what it's called. The idea of Black Leopard, Red Wolf is that a group of mercenaries, of strange people, come together to search for a missing boy. In this case, the point of view character is Tracker, the Red Wolf of the title. He has the ability to find missing things. He's been involved with another man called the Leopard, who sort of is, I think, instrumental in recruiting him into this band of mercenaries who go in search of this missing boy. So eventually, after many adventures, they find this boy and return him where he should be. And then years later, Tracker goes in pursuit of this young boy for revenge. The novel is told in a very sort of interrogational style. Tracker is being interrogated and telling his story. And the idea of the Dark Star Trilogy is that each novel in this trilogy tells the same story just from a different point of view. So in this case, it's Tracker's point of view. And I read it shortly after it came out in 2019 and quite liked it. The style is a bit rough, but once you kind of get used to it, if you look past it, it's really a sword and sorcery novel, story, and just really well told. And just this past month, I picked up the sequel to Black Leopard, Red Wolf. This is Moon Witch, Spider King, which tells the story from the point of view of Sokolon, the witch who was one of the driving forces behind the group and trying to find the missing boy. So I'm quite interested to see what she has to say and how her story differs from Tracker's. And I'll get to, I'll reread Black Leopard, Red Wolf at some point, maybe in the next few months, and then try to have a go at Moon Witch, Spider King shortly thereafter. Or I could try to aim for June to read both of them roughly back to back or near back to back. The next batch of books are all by N.K. Jemisin, who I have pretty much every book she's published except for media tie-ins. And I have a complicated reading relationship with her. I have everything she's written or every book she's published, but I don't necessarily get along with her work. Her work really doesn't quite work for me, even though she is a fantastic writer and one of the most important science fiction and fantasy writers writing today. But anyway, so I have, first of all, the Inheritance Trilogy in this big omnibus edition. I read the first novel in this series, The 100,000 Kingdoms, years ago, and I think I'm billed within the first chapter or two. I sort of, when you have gods as major characters, I don't think they should be enslaved. They should probably be the one doing the enslaving. But anyway, so I ended up bailing on the book, but I wanted to have another go at it. So I picked this up about 6 years ago and never got around to it. So I really should try to make the effort to either reread, have another go at 100,000 Kingdoms and read the rest of the trilogy, or eventually send it on its way. The next two books I have by N.K. Jemisin are part of the Dreamblood duology. First is The Killing the Moon, which I had a go at this years ago, and then I bought it and read it a year or two ago. It might have been last year. And I didn't particularly care for it. I thought the world building, there's a bit of a muddle to the story that I didn't particularly get on with. I don't really like the characters. Sort of the reason why the characters are doing what they do just didn't quite sit right with me. And I'm not entirely sure if the thematics are quite what Jemisin intended. But anyway. And I also have the second book in the series, The Shadowed Sun, which I haven't gotten to yet. And which annoyingly has a barcode on the bag. The next three are the Broken Earth trilogy. First is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is probably her most famous work. She won the Hugo for all three books in the trilogy, back to back. The first three-peat, I think, in Hugo's history. And I had a go at this in 2017. I think the summer of 2017, and I didn't quite get on with it. So I ended up bailing within a chapter or two, but I do want to come back to these because, again, they are highly rated. I also have The Obelisk Gate and The Stone Sky. I also have How Long Till Black Future Month. This is her collection of short stories, which there are a few in here I really liked and some that I didn't particularly care for. My favorite stories from this collection were The City Born Great. I quite liked that. Red Dirt Witch was really good. I think Walking Awake was one I quite liked too. But yeah, so there were some I quite liked and some that I didn't particularly care for. Again, N.K. Jemisin is, I think, rather more miss with me than hit. And finally, The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. This is her most recent novel that's not a tie-in. It's the beginning of a new series. In this case, it's an urban fantasy epic in which various cities, once they reach a certain point, can manifest within an avatar. And this avatar becomes the city. And this novel tells about, the story of the birth of the avatar of New York, and how when cities achieve this point and manifest into an avatar, that another city begins an attack on these cities, and in beating back an attack, the avatar sort of shatters and goes into a coma, and the individual boroughs of New York then manifest as avatars, and they have to come together to beat back this assault and and find the missing avatar of New York. I actually quite liked this novel. I didn't really love it, but I did quite like it. It's fun. I mean, some of the characters I quite liked. Some of them I didn't particularly care for. I mean, I do have some. I like the general thrust of the plot and the writing. There were some issues I had, but yeah, kind of interested to see where N.K. Jemisin takes the story from here. And moving away from N.K. Jemisin, I have The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. This is a space opera that I read in, I think, 2020. And it's about a spaceship captain who's been hired to take care of a young boy on the run from a interstellar conglomerate. There are parts of the novel that I liked and parts that I didn't particularly care for, and the not particularly caring for parts tend to outweigh the parts that I did like. I do want to come back to this, though, eventually. And the last 4 books on this shelf are by Louis Cha, who writes under the pen name Jin Yong, which is how I have these placed on my shelves. This is the Legend of the Condor Heroes. This is Volume 1, A Hero Born, UK trade paperback. I started picking these up before the US editions started to come out, and I decided to stick with the UK. This is the second volume, A Bond Undone. This is the third volume, A Snake Lies Waiting. And this is the fourth volume, A Heart Divided. So, the Legend of the Condor Heroes series is set in the last years of the Jin Empire, before the novel concludes with the fall of the Jin to Genghis Khan. More specifically, the Legend of the Condor Heroes is the story of Guo Jing, a young man who is the son of a Chinese patriot who was raised in Mongolia after a Jin prince orchestrated the destruction of his home village and his family's homestead, as well as a neighbor's homestead who was himself a Chinese patriot who was also, his wife was at the time also pregnant with a child, and they decided that children would be blood brothers if they were of the same, or blood siblings if they were of the same sex, and betrothed that they were of the opposite sex. So Guo Jing is off in Mongolia, where he's raised by Genghis Khan, and then later found by a group of martial artists called the Seven Freaks of the South, who have made a bet with a priest of the Quanjin sect to train him, while the priest of the Quanjin sect would train the other young boy to eventually have a martial arts fight when they both turn 16. And so the main thrust of the novel is when Guo Jing's 16 and he's going off to fight in this competition, and he has a number of adventures since. He meets the love of his life. He meets a number of master martial artists and learns numerous techniques from many of them. Has a few run-ins with his blood brother, even though, except for one or two instances, they really are enemies most of the time. They never actually do have that big showdown, though. Of course, all things considered, I think Seven Southern Freaks of the South, I think, technically win, though, and stuff. So it's it's a fantastic series. I read them all last year. I'm quite looking forward to rereading them again in the future, and I'm hoping that the second and third novels in the greater Condor trilogy come out. The bit of a author's note at the end of A Heart Divided that seems to imply that the second novel in the trilogy is going to be coming out, but I haven't seen any signs of it on Book Depository, so I don't know for sure, but hopefully. But that was part 32 of my 2022 library tour. I will be back tomorrow with part 33 and the conclusion of the third bookcase of science fiction and fantasy. And then on Friday, we'll be starting a new bookcase. So until tomorrow, BookTube, thank you. Have a great afternoon and stay safe.